Okay, so I'm going to be talking about how to integrate like simple AJAX into a Rails app. So if you're not familiar with what AJAX is, it stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. And it allows parts of a web page to be updated without having to refresh the entire page. And so it's a combination of HTML and CSS and JavaScript and DOM manipulation. So the reason that I wanted to figure this out is because in the app that we use, we keep track of, we call them scholar hours, but I guess they're kind of like detentions for kids. And as the years gone on, like this list has just gotten gigantic for detentions. And so if you watch, this is a video of like how long it took to refresh the page, and this is like, you'll see the seconds counting down right here. Okay, so it clicks complete. This gets really awkward because it takes so long.
Wow.
Okay, and then it refreshes. So every time that a teacher had to check off a scholar hour for a kid serving a detention, like it was pretty miserable. So after AJAX, it's really fun to complete scholar hours because it's like instant. So that's what AJAX does. It's just sending data to the server and then refreshing it, or sending data back without refreshing the entire page. So I kind of explained this. This is a diagram from w3schools.com. But some event occurs, whether that's a click or mouse over or whatever you want to bind to. It creates an XML HTTP request object, and then it sends that to the server. The server processes that request and creates a response and sends that back. And that response is processed using JavaScript, so it updates the page content without refreshing everything. I didn't finish this slide. Okay, this is surprising. So normally, like you click something, it routes the controller action, it sends that HTML, and it reloads the page. So in a Rails app, if you want to do like a very simple version of AJAX, if you include respond to HTML and JS, then that controller will know that it's going to receive both HTML, or it can respond to HTML and JavaScript. And then in your views folder, you're going to have your normal views like html.erb, but you'll also see, like, if you look at the third one down, destroy.js.erb, so that's JavaScript and embedded Ruby at the same time. So any controller action that you want to respond to an AJAX request, you'll need some kind of view for it, and I'll show you what those look like. So this is what your controller looks like. It looks like normal. The only thing that's different is that line to respond to HTML and JavaScript as well. But other than that, there's nothing different than what you would normally do. So in an index.html.erb, you would have going over or iterating over your posts, and then for each of the posts, it's going to render a partial for that post, which looks like this. So this is pretty small. Sorry about that. What I did is I gave each div a class that had an ID attached to it, and that's so that you can then target that specific div with that post ID number and either take it out, remove it, or replace it, whatever you're wanting to do with your AJAX. So that's that top thing, interpolating post ID. Down at the bottom, also interpolating the post ID so that you can give specific IDs to target the edit and the delete. And then what's most important is that you set remote true, and that shows the controller that you're sending an AJAX request for those two links there. So then in your controller, the method will look the same, edit, and then it finds the post with the correct ID. And normally it would then render the edit.html.erb, but since it's responding to both HTML and JavaScript, it's going to render, or it's going to go to this view called edit.js.erb, which looks like this. And so line 1 is going to find that element that had that specific ID, which came from the post right there, and it's going to hide it. And that was the link. If we go back here, line 6, that's the edit link, which I'll show you when I demo this. So it's going to hide that edit link, and then it's going to take that post with that specific ID, find the parent, which is like inside a div, and replace it with, you escape the JavaScript and you render the form partial. So that looks like this. So the form partial, again, has a class with that specific post ID so that you can then target it again. And then again, setting the remote as true so it knows it's an AJAX request there. And then when it updates, obviously it looks the same in the controller, but normally you would have like a redirect to in your update, whereas in this case, if we're doing it with AJAX, you're going to have a view or something in your view file folder called update.js.erb, which looks like this. So this is going to find the element that had the class with that specific post ID and replace it with the actual post partial, and again, escaping the JavaScript. And then it's going to unhide that edit link that we originally hid when we went to edit it in the first place. So, so that's like basic. If you're just doing basic, update and edit and things like that. But you can also do more customizable AJAX if you want to create your own JavaScript file with the jQuery post. And so this is just an example. There's a lot of different ways you can write this. But so it takes a URL, like what URL you want to send it to, and then what you want to send. You don't necessarily have to put a function in there. You could just put data, whatever you're sending for your data. But if you want to do something with the results that you get back, then you'll need that function passing in the data and then what you want to do to the data. So in this case, it would be finding something that has a class of result and then inserting the data that you get back from the server. So this is an example of how we used it in the SwapBot, the app that we created at school. And you'll see the example down there. So it's using post and then the URL, which is a variable defined on line 61. So it's sending the data to send, which is line 62, about student IDs and course IDs and whatever actions that they're doing, and sending it to that, that URL that we defined there. Okay, so I'm going to finish super early. So if you click edit, it just, like you saw in the presentation, it finds that thing that has that ID, it hid the edit link, and then you can type here. Okay, so then you update the post and it automatically does that. It doesn't refresh the page or anything. And then the delete link as well as, you can't see that it deleted, but it did. Yeah. So that's all I have, and I have 6 minutes left. This always happens.
Well, that's totally fine. So we have time for questions. And if you get out early, that's totally fine.
I like the app name.
Oh, yeah. Forgot that was up there. Is that all? All right.